This is Ralph Rensler, director of the Smithsonian Bicentennial Folklife Festival. If you enjoyed the festival, you'll be interested in this invitation.
Ladies and gentlemen, an opportunity like this cannot be taken for granted.
This evening, we are going to be beating our hearts out for you all, so I want to see people enjoying themselves. So get up and feel the music and do something about it, okay?
This event is a right of cultural democracy.
We have many, many partners, you included. I encourage you to stand alongside with us as we travel this journey year after year.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this live stream event, Journey to Zero Waste, Reduce, Reuse and Recycle, part of the Folklife Festival's collaboration with Earth Optimism. My name is Gavin Shire, and I'll be moderating today's discussion on the important issue of sustainability, and particularly the idea of zero waste. We have a terrific panel of experts who'll be giving us their take on the subject, as well as telling us a little about their own personal journeys towards zero waste. But before that, we have a special guest, Sierra Williams, who is the co-executive director of the Post Landfill Action Network. Sierra, thank you for joining us. Sierra, can you start by telling us what the Post Landfill Action Network is and how it came to be?
Absolutely. So the Post Landfill Action Network, or PLAN, was started in 2013 by a group of college students wanting to disrupt the issue of waste on their campus. And closer towards the end of the school year, they noticed a massive amounts of stuff being thrown away. And upon closer investigation, they realized that a lot of it was perfectly good, and they really wanted to recirculate it back into the campus community or beyond the campus community. Since often this was furniture, mini fridges, and all kinds of different things like that. So since 2013 up until now, we've since scaled our programs to include much more than our original Move Out program, but we offer a bunch of different supports to young people on college and university campuses wanting to get involved in zero waste. So we support students to begin composting programs on their campuses. We support students to conduct campus-wide zero waste infrastructure assessments so that they can advocate for campus-wide solutions and so much more.
Wonderful. And what are your founding principles or ideals?
Yeah, that's a great question. Central to our work is our theory of change, which is called the points of intervention theory. So basically, the points of intervention theory is encouraging us to take a systems-wide approach to the issue. So when it comes to waste, we're not just looking at waste when it becomes waste, but we're situating it within its larger system, also called the linear consumption economy. So that expands our understanding of the issue of waste. And the linear consumption economy goes all the way from extraction to the point of disposal. So in addition to allowing us to have a broader and more nuanced understanding of the issue, it also broadens our scope of the solutions and the ways that we're able to address the issue of waste. So it's supporting people to go beyond addressing waste when it becomes waste, but also looking at the different systems, actions, and behaviors prior to that.
Right. Thank you. What would you say your biggest hurdles are in this effort? This sounds like a pretty far-reaching and complex issue. So what are you coming up against with all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I want to circle back to the name of PLAN, Post Landfill Action Network. So our work is centered around making a world without waste possible, and that is a lofty goal. It is a complex goal, and it definitely involves so many people acting in concert with each other. So when it comes to a challenge that we face in this work, I think a lot of it is a narrative, a challenge of narrative. Often because we work specifically with college and university campuses, they're often thinking about waste within the confines of their campus. But through the linear consumption economy and through a points of intervention theory, we're really trying to encourage students and college campuses to really first take accountability for the ways in which waste operates within their campus, but to also think outside of their campus. When it comes to issues such as landfilling, incineration, and so forth, that is often taking place outside of the campus. It's really important for campuses to really see themselves as part of a larger network in which waste and other materials are flowing back and forth. And that not only impacts the natural environment, but it also impacts quality of life. So it's really supporting campuses and students to really see the bigger picture of waste before it becomes waste, actually, before it enters the waste stream.
So you're trying to get students to look beyond their own student existence to something bigger. Well, that sounds like a challenge in itself, but I know you've had some successes, not just challenges. But can you tell us a little bit about what you've managed to achieve so far?
Absolutely, yeah. I think a big example relating to this and the challenge of narratives is really connecting the issue of plastics to climate change. Plastic is a petrochemical product. And as we know, petrochemicals are a major influencer of global climate change. So it's really about addressing the issue of plastics, not just when it comes to eliminating them on a campus, but really thinking about in which communities is plastic being produced? Where are the materials for plastic production coming from? What are the results of that production process in terms of the impact on the workers as well as the surrounding natural environment? So I think a major success in kind of weaving all of these different pieces together is our STOP program, which stands for Students Taking on Petrochemicals. And we're specifically focusing on the Appalachian region, and we're connecting local college students to local grassroots efforts. So they're not only advocating for the reduction and elimination of single-use plastics within their college campus, but they're also connecting it to this broader issue of global climate change and the ongoing expansion of the petrochemical industry in that region. So it's really a way for students to kind of learn campus organizing and navigating bureaucracy and building student power, but it's also a way for them to get involved in the local community and really to add that value and increase the capacity of local grassroots organizing efforts.
And some important life skills into the bargain. So sounds great. We just have 30 seconds left. If were a college student, it's been a long time since I've been a college student, but if I were a college student on campus, how would I find out more about PLAN, more about what's going on in my college, and if there isn't anything happening, how would I get started?
Thank you for that question. I think a great place is to look us up. We are found at postlandfill.org, and we're a membership-based organization. So college campuses become members, and we also offer free and subsidized membership. So our goal is to never turn anybody away. And through membership, you gain access to one-on-one advising with our team of experts. You gain access to different manuals on how to start and support the existing programs on campus. So I think just like initiating that first contact to us is a really great place to start.
Wonderful. Well, Sierra Williams from the Post Landfill Action Network, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I'd like now to introduce our four panelists. They are Stephanie Miller, author of Zero Waste Living and the 80-20 Way, A Busy Person's Guide to a Lighter Footprint. Laura Tuferiello, president and founder of Design and Source Productions, and writer and producer of the Watch the Feet video. Diana Njai, senior curator and cultural heritage specialist at the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, and Eric Hollinger, archaeologist at the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History. Welcome, one and all. And Stephanie, I'd like to start with you, if possible. You've written extensively about the zero waste concept, but what do we mean when we talk about zero waste?
Yes, so first of all, thank you for the introduction, Gavin, and it's great to be with all of you. Zero waste can mean different things depending on where you sit. If you're in government, it means one thing. If you're in industry, it means something else. When I talk about zero waste, I'm talking about what it means from the personal perspective. And here, it's a pretty simple concept. It's about drastically reducing our consumption and therefore our waste, and therefore sending less to landfills, incinerators, and ultimately ecosystems. And what I really love about the zero waste concept is it dovetails really nicely with climate change, which I spent most of my career working on, because obviously the less that is produced, the less energy needed, and the less greenhouse gas emissions that we need to worry about.
I see. The zero in zero waste can seem quite intimidating. Can we ever expect to get to zero? Is that the most important thing?
So the bad news is we can't get to zero, not in this society that we live in. But the good news is we can actually do a lot, and we can dramatically decrease our carbon and waste footprints. And what I'd like to focus on is actually a concept I borrowed from business, the 80-20 rule. And I think about 80-20, the 80-20 rule applied to zero waste living as essentially, if we look at the 20% easiest and most impactful things we could do as individuals to reduce our footprints, we can get to about 80% of the results that we're looking for. So about 3 years ago, when I left my career, I did a lot of research, talked to a lot of plastics, food waste experts, and others, and realized that it all boils down to actions around three themes: food, plastics, and recycling, which we can talk about some more, but those are the three areas to focus on.
Wonderful, thank you. Laura, I'd like to just turn to you, because when we talk about sustainable living and zero waste lifestyle, it's easy just to think about us as end consumers and the waste we produce personally, but there's more to it than that, right? You're the creator and producer of a short animated film, Watch the Feet, that explores that concept. And for those who haven't seen the film yet, can you explain its premise?
Sure. I called the film Watch the Feet, which was really inspired by the phrase, watch the feet, not the mouth. So sort of like walk the walk, don't talk the talk, and watch what your actual footprint is. I believe that most people want to be sustainable, but it can be very confusing. People are thinking that recycling and biodegradability is the end all, but it really is more than that. But the film is really to help teach consumers how to look at a product before they even buy it. There's the main character, who is a footprint, and the character is called Elsie, which stands for life cycle. And when you think of one product, there are actually 5 stages, which reflect the 5 toes of Elsie's foot, and they all start with the letter N. So as Sierra was talking about extraction, we call it materials, manufacturing, moving, maintenance, and the memorial. So we leave an eco footprint with everything we take away from the earth, or everything we're using from the earth, as well as everything we leave behind, whether it's trash or toxins or pollutants. So Elsie helps you look at what is extracted and what is left behind in each of those stages of a product.
Great. Well, and we'll come back to that concept in a moment, but I'm just going to switch to Diana. I understand that you're looking at the clothing industry and how much clothing gets discarded. What are you discovering?
Well, actually, thank you, first of all, for this wonderful discussion, Gavin. I actually went on a family trip to Senegal, and we were staying at a fishing village, and I was really horrified to see all of these clothes that came from the fast garment industry ending up on the seaside. And I had, in my former life, been the repair lady at my mom's dry cleaning store. So what I learned there was the value of repairing, of saving, of looking at the quality of garments. And so you can see there was all of this horrible stuff. And turns out that there's actually 5 million used garments from the US, from Europe, and from Australia that end up in West Africa every week. And there's also just 185 tons of used clothes in Kenya just last year, and then 18,500 tons of used clothes in Senegal just in just the space of a few months. So this is a tremendous problem. And at the same time, there are traditional artisans that are not being supported. So I agree with everything that's been said so far, that we need to look at this issue and see how we can produce less and support artisans more.
Those are some fairly frightening statistics you just read there. Eric, I'll switch to you. In speaking with you earlier, I learned about a new term, for me at least, Garbology. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and how you came to get involved in it as an archaeologist with the Natural History Museum?
Yes, well, Garbology is a subfield of archaeology. It is the study of trash, or modern trash. To archaeologists, all trash is artifacts and evidence. And although we usually study it thousands of years old or hundreds of years old, modern trash is equally artifacts that we can learn from human behavior by the study of. So I got into it because as an archaeologist in the Natural History Museum, I work with Native American tribes that are claiming the human remains and funerary objects from the museum. And in consulting with a tribe, we were having lunch in the museum's cafeteria one day, and they questioned me, they challenged me on why we were serving them on styrofoam plates. They said, we were a natural history museum, we should know better than that, what the environmental consequences of using such materials was. And so I took that as a challenge to question my own museum administration and restaurant management as to why we were doing what we were doing and how could we make improvements. So I'm happy to say that today, styrofoam is banned across the Smithsonian, and our largest museums compost all of their waste, and we use compostable products. We are working to eliminate single-use disposable plastics. And our diversion rate for here at the Natural History Museum, when our operations are running properly, have exceeded 70% of our waste diversion.
Wow, that's terrific. So just to follow on, what does Garbology reveal about us that other methods of investigation, like polls or questionnaires, perhaps don't?
Well, we find that people tend to lie about what they actually do. And surveys and polls, people will reflect what they would like to be perceived as or how they would like to be seen, even when it's a blind test and you don't know who's actually answering the question. So Garbology has revealed some things. For instance, there was a famous survey where archaeologists asked people to reveal how much alcohol, how many beers they had per week. And people were very conservative and said only a couple per week. And when they studied the trash from those households, they found it was actually quite a lot more. But people did not want to see themselves as in that way. So the Garbology then gets at the truth, gets at the real evidence, the real facts, the artifacts that reveal the truth about what people do.
Thanks. Guilty as charged on the whole beer thing. Laura, I'll go back to you. Can you tell us a little bit about the sustainable pathway? I think many of us have obviously heard about the reduce, reuse, recycle phrase, but those three concepts aren't necessarily equal, are they?
No. First, the Sustainable Pathway is a exhibition that's on the National Mall right now as part of the Earth Optimism of the Folklife Festival. And you can see it, it's a structure with all the big M's that you can go through to remind people that you have those 5 M's that need to be considered when you are consuming something. So the character Elsie is actually in a comic strip within that sustainable pathway, talking about the life cycle, taking you through the life cycle of a t-shirt, because there are billions of t-shirts out there every year. And she explains some of the things that you have to be aware of at each stage, as well as little tips on how to reduce your footprint at that stage. So that's fun. The reduce, reuse, and recycle. It's brilliant because it's actually in order. The first thing we really should do is reduce. Really buy less. We let things last longer, right? Every time you buy something new, you're creating a brand new footprint that has 5 stages to it. The less you buy, the less footprints you make. Reuse is really to make sure that each product, if you are extracting resources and causing toxins or pollution, use it as long as you can. So reuse things either yourself or find other ways to reuse them. And then the last one, really, even though it's excellent, but it's not the solution alone, is recycling. And by recycling, you are actually cutting down on having to extract new materials or new manufacturing, but it still has a footprint. So overconsumption needs to be dealt with, I think, as the first one, and reduce is the most important in my mind.
That's a challenge in this country that is built on consumerism, but thank you. Eric, I understand that you began to ask some questions about the sustainability of the Folklife Festival itself and managed to get some real change. Can you talk a little bit about the Folklife Festival's sustainability journey and what it's accomplished over the years?
Yes, when I first started with the Smithsonian, the Folklife Festival had a lot of food vendors, and they were providing material in styrofoam containers and plastic cups, and those were ending up as waste all over the National Mall, blowing out of trash cans up and down the National Mall, and it was quite a chore for the staff to try to, and Park Service, to keep that under control. And we felt that we should try to do more to walk that walk and talk that talk, and try to curb that behavior because it's so publicly visible. And so by studying the Folklife Festival, the behaviors of the people there, the processes, we made adjustments, and we changed the contracts for the vendors to ban styrofoam and to require them to use compostable products like this corn-based cup and the sugarcane fiber container. So no styrofoam is used, no single-use disposable plastics are used or given out by the Folklife Festival vendors. And then we take control by having resource recovery stations, not trash stations, resource recovery stations, tended by educated volunteers who help guide people on how to put that in the proper bin, and then that material is all diverted to composting and to recycling. So we try to reduce, as has been discussed, as much as possible what we take in, eliminate things that we might not need at all, like straws. A lot of times people don't need a straw to drink out of a cup. So eliminate those, saves the vendor some money. And if we do have to have straws, make sure they're compostable. So the Folklife Festival, in the 4 years before the pandemic shut down, exceeded 90% diversion rates with the waste that it generated by its footprint. So I think this has been a real landmark. It's been studied by festivals around the world, music festivals and other places. Park Service, environmental organizations are studying how we do this. And it has won awards from the American Museum Association.
Congratulations to you and the festival organizers for that achievement. Stephanie, what do you say to people when they question how much difference can one person make?
Yeah, so I get this question actually quite a bit. And I used to ask myself this question when I was leading climate change. I wondered, what could I be doing in my own life, right? And it turns out there are some really important areas. And I'll just give you one example on food waste. So if food, I don't know, the statistic is if food waste were ranked as a country, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, it would be ranked third behind the US and China. So the greenhouse gas footprint of food waste is humongous. And that's because when food ends up in the landfill, it produces methane, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So then you say, well, what can I do about it? And this is what's so empowering, is to realize that we at the household level are the single biggest contributors to food waste, at least in developed rich countries like the US. We account for 40% of the problem. So then you can start to think about how important it is to take some actions like never shop without a food list, a grocery list, introduce a leftovers night, make sure that food waste that is inevitable gets composted. The second thing I would say that's really exciting about the power of the individual is that it turns out we are social animals. We care what our peers think about us. And that means that through our behaviors, whether it's bringing our own reusable water bottles with us wherever we go, or whatever actions we take publicly or through social media, these will be noticed and can set an example for others who are looking for good examples out there.
That's fascinating to hear. I mean, we hear so much about restaurants and food waste at restaurants, and nobody really talks about food waste at home and the contribution that we make there. So start at home before we go out to dinner, making as much of an effort as we can. Thank you. Diana, if I can turn back to you, as well as being the senior curator at the Smithsonian Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage, you're also an artist. Can you tell us about how you've used your art to try to raise awareness and sustainability issues and the importance of art in general in the environmental movement?
Sure, sure. Thank you, Gavin. And I guess again, we're talking about some of the same issues. The fact that I try to bring attention to environmental issues by only using recycled items in the clothing that I make and in the jewelry that I make, and making a point to really teach through using these recycled items. And I think that going along with that is just giving people a good way to learn about, what's quality in clothing. Why not support artisans and make clothing that is not fatty, or not, don't buy clothing that is fatty, but look at clothing that will last a lifetime, that you can even pass on to your kids. And I think that that's part of the thing. And also I was very impressed by something that an environmental activist, Nikita Sarumaga, said. And she said that, if an imported shirt in Africa cost less than $1, how can the local industries compete? And so those local craftspeople ending up only being able to afford a $1 t-shirt. And we want to make sure that we're not only supporting local artists, but we're also educating about how who the local artists are and who's doing important work, and or making it yourself, becoming an artist yourself.
Thank you. Stephanie, just to go back to what you were talking about earlier about individuals making a difference. It can be an overwhelming sort of slew of choices that are in front of us. Where should I, if I'm looking to make a difference myself, where is a good place to start? Can you talk about maybe something that that you did to start your journey, perhaps?
Yeah, I would say it can be very overwhelming, and I think it helps to start simply. I always say to people starting, pick one thing, and that one thing, let's say in the plastics realm, might look different in your life than it does in mine. But one of the things I started with was when I was in the corporate world, I was going through a couple of these every day in the office. I'm embarrassed to say it now, but that adds up to more than 600 bottles that I was contributing to in terms of the trash, hopefully the recycling. I switched to my reusable bottle. I carry this with me wherever I go. I made sort of a pledge to myself that if I forgot my bottle at home, I would go thirsty, and that means I don't forget it the next time I leave the house. Um, and I would say that, where I started my journey was at the dry cleaners. I realized I was always bothered by the plastic waste at the cleaners. You saw that picture earlier, that slide. I was going through a lot of it every week. And I went into my local dry cleaners about 3 years ago. I asked if they would put my clean clothes into my own garment bag. They said yes. Wasn't a big deal. And so that got me thinking maybe other customers would be interested as well. So I went in a couple weeks later, asked if they'd be willing to adopt a reusable bag program. And today, unlike the picture on the left, which is where it was a couple of years ago with all the plastic, today when you go into that dry cleaners, you see this whole group of reusable dark green bags. And that made me realize that we actually can have a difference as an individual. Actually, that got me to start a community grassroots program, which you can ask me about separately if you'd like. DC Reduces. This sticker tells the customers that the retail establishment is open to people bringing their own containers, and in this case, their own garment bags. So that's exciting.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that. And Eric, I understand you've been doing some work within the Smithsonian to reduce waste. Can you talk a little bit about some of that effort and what it's led to?
Yes, the Smithsonian, we have some unique types of trash. We have banner exhibits, banners that hang on the outside of the museum, or movie banners that historically were thrown away. And there's beautiful art and photographs and imagery. And our exhibits people were always asking, what more can we do with these rather than throw them away? And so I explored that, and I took it upon myself to take the banners home with me and wash them, hang them in trees to dry, and to contact copyright owners of the imagery to make sure that they would give their permission to allow the banners to be taken and cut up and sewn into tote bags. So we now use Folklife and other museum exhibit banners and turn them into reusable tote bags that we can then sell for sustainability for to staff to raise money to buy LED light bulbs across the Smithsonian. So it's kind of a sustainability bake sale in that sense, but it's a new way of using materials.
I can only imagine what your neighbors must have thought seeing Smithsonian exhibit banners hanging in your trees. But it sounds like it's been a very successful venture. Diana, you and others have talked today about some of the waste impacts of mass manufactured clothing. There's a movement that engages local communities to create handmade clothing from recycled materials. Can you tell us about the value of supporting those sorts of initiatives, not just for the environment, but for those local communities themselves?
Yeah, thank you. What is happening along with the incidences of fast fashion and so on is that there are important skills sets and important knowledge, important heritage in the way of crafts that is lost when people are buying stuff willy-nilly off the rack, and the average is people wear something 7 times and throw it away. And so one of the efforts that I've been working with specifically is something that started at the Smithsonian called the African American Craft Initiative, really to give more visibility to craftspeople who are working in a variety of media, and among them clothing, to make sure that people understand the importance of materials that people are using, materials often recycled, but also natural materials, to produce new things, so that it's not only preserving things in the environment by buying less and buying things of more quality, but also supporting artisans. And this is not only in the United States, but also globally. I think that it's important that people recognize the work that goes into a basket, that goes into something, a container that is a pottery container that you can put things in, and you don't have to use plastic. So these are traditionally recyclable things. And so there are many, many movements across the nation and now across the globe that are supporting this. And you can see some of these in the Earth Optimism section of our Folklife Festival this year.
And always I found far more pleasant to look at than the mass manufactured cheap plastic stuff. You get a piece of art as well very often. So.
Definitely. And supporting our marketplace, which is
exactly,
which is great stuff made by the people who are here.
Laura, we're familiar, I think everybody should be by now familiar with the Recycle logo, but what it really means and what can practically be recycled is a pretty confusing area. I understand you've helped initiate a new product label, the How to Recycle label. Can you tell us what that is and how does it work?
Sure, I'm so glad you asked about that. Well, number one, the chasing arrows, the three little arrows that chase each other that are on a lot of plastics do not necessarily mean the item is recyclable. There's a number in the middle of it, and that just is to identify what type of plastic it is. There is, however, because I believe people want to do the right thing and want to recycle, but they get very confused. So as part of the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, about 10 years ago, we started working on the How to Recycle label. And yes, it's great because the slide is up there right now, which shows you what the website is and also what the label looks like. This label is used by a lot of the big brands now on the outside of their packaging to at least let people know what the packaging, what is part of the packaging and what to do with it so that it becomes a valuable recycled material. Recycling is a business, and if the materials are not recycled well, they're not worth anything. So it's really important to try to recycle, follow the rules. Now, recycling is extremely complicated because every municipality does it differently. Some places let you put it all in one stream, put everything in one bin. Some people have you sort it. Some places don't recycle certain things and do recycle other things. So it's important for people to get familiar with what happens in their municipality. And if you're outside, to look for the correct bins. One little tip I'll tell you about the How to Recycle label is on all those water bottles, even though we don't want to use them, or water or soda bottles, to recycle those are one of the most recycled products, and that kind of material can be endlessly used. So if it's recycled and doesn't end up in the ocean, it's so much better. But one thing to sort of help everyone is that when you are going to recycle a bottle, it should be empty and you should put the lid back on. Now, why you do that is you put the lid back on because the lid by itself is too small and sometimes falls through the recycling stream. When it's on the bottle, even though it's a different plastic than the bottle itself, when they melt it all down, there are different weights, and some of them, the polypropylene comes to the top and they can separate it easily. So be sure to put your cap back on your bottles. And the second thing is make sure you empty the bottles. because if it's in a recycling facility and it's being machine sorted, it goes by weight. And if you've left a little bit of water or soda inside there, it's going to get kicked off because it's not going to realize it's an empty bottle. So those are two little things that we can do to help recycle as much of the plastic as we use.
Thank you. And I'm afraid I think that's all we have time for. We've reached the end, but I'd like to thank all of you, Diana and Jai, Eric Hollinger, Laura Tuferiello, and Stephanie Miller, as well as Sierra Williams, for joining us today and giving us some of their insights, as well as a chance to appreciate their commitment to sustainability and to learn something about each of them and their own experiences on their journey to zero waste living. So thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.